So, a quick Battle Angel Alita update. So recently, the readers of Battle Angel Alita Mars Chronicle was greeted with a very interesting surprise. We were greeted with the finale of the series. Now, if you recall, Battle Angel Alita Mars Chronicle was the third in a trilogy of comic series. And with the completion of the series Mars Chronicle, it was basically the end of the era. But not exactly, for when we were told that this was the end of this series, we were also told by Yukito Kishiro that there will be a fourth series called Battle Angel Alita Panzerkunst Chronicles. And so not only is this not the end of the Battle Angel Alita series, it's far from it. And it's a good thing too, because there's a lot of unanswered questions that we have with regards to this comic series. Yes, we got a lot of closure with the end of BAA Mars Chronicle. There was a lot of things that I was satisfied with anyway with regards to this series. And I'm not going to go into too much detail here because I don't want to spoil it for people who have not read the recent chapters or even potentially the series. But as for the people who's read the chapter, they also know that there is a lot of story that needs to continue. And although this might be a slight spoiler, the easiest way we could think about it is that there will probably be a time skip, similar to Dragon Ball versus Dragon Ball Z, or Naruto versus Naruto Shippuden, right? And the closure that we get is with regards to, of course, little Yoko and her story. And what was interesting is, of course, there was a lot of very interesting stories that went on in Mars Chronicle. The beginning was, of course, with regards to Baron Muster and all the initial adventures that Yoko had with Erika, and the terrors and the good times that she saw with her best friend. And of course, when we got to the latter part, we started seeing some very interesting things with regards to the story, including a very nice meetup with a very nostalgic character, not only for the two kids, but also for us readers as well. And the story, of course, started opening up some understanding of what went on in the history of Panzerkunst and on the planet of Mars with regards to the experiences that these two kids had. And with the closing of the story, there is some closure with regards to the questions we had when we started reading the story with regards to what really did happen to Yoko and Erika. But what we also got was a lot more opening of questions because, of course, as we went into the story, we also learned a lot about the interesting happenings that were going on in Grunthal, the Panzerkunst Academy, Yoko and Erika, and all the miscellaneous characters that came out. And some of the characters we saw in this series we got closure with, but others will most likely be transferred into the next series as well. And of course, the Mars Chronicle series all ties in the original story, the Zero story of Yoko and Erika, to the most recent times that we're seeing with regards to Alita and Erika, and all the interesting things that happened during the recent times, including a certain mysterious character that seems to be coming out to be the end boss of this story. And so the questions that came out, of course, some of them asked the questions with regards to the relationship of what's happening at the very latter part of Mars Chronicle to that potential end boss that is still influencing Alita and her world and her adventure in the present time. And so it will be interesting to see what happens. There's most likely going to be a time skip, because I presume that what happens afterwards will be a much older Yoko, but we'll probably go back to eventually seeing what's happening in the recent era of Alita, maybe in the latter part of the Panzerkunst Chronicle, and everything will eventually get tied up at the very end. And so I am looking forward to seeing what happens. It was interesting, this story I had to go back to reread it again, mostly because the chapters came out so far distanced from each other that you kind of forgot the story when you read the next chapter. So it was piecemeal, and I couldn't make any sense of the chapters because I've completely forgotten what the plot was. But now with the recent closure of the series, you could go back to binge reading all this, and and I found out it's a very interesting story. And once you see the connection one chapter after the other, you start understanding, okay, now I understand what's going on. To some extent, because there's a lot of mystery with regards to the history of Panzerkunst and the potential, conspiracy? Dark stories that are occurring in Mars? And this, of course, ties back to what's going on in the present time, right? So it will be interesting to see how Yukito Kishiro closes this entire series with the next series that's coming up. Now, what my biggest worry is it takes so long for Yukito Kishiro to write these chapters that I don't know if the entire Panzerkunst Chronicle will be completed in any time of the near future. It may be literally decades before he gets done with the final series. And I hope he gets to the point that he can finish the final series. I do not want to see this series experience what we saw with Berserk and Kentaro Miura, right? I hope Yukito Kishiro will focus back in being able to complete this series because it started out and spanned so much of our lives following it. But in any case, we won't really be able to tell. I mean, that's up to Yukito Kishiro. But I'll continue to read this because the story is very interesting, and I hope we do get to see closure between Yoko and Erika eventually. But in any case, I just wanted to give my feelings with regards to the recent interesting surprise ending of Mars Chronicle. And I just wanted to ask you, if you read the final chapters, what you think about it, and what do you want to see in the next series that's coming up. Thank you very much for any comments that you can leave. And until the next series comes out, happy manga reading. And as always, have a nice day, everyone.